the day David Bowie kicked Jimmy Page out of his home. More than a few rock stars of the last century were attracted by occultism, and among these stars were Jimmy Page and David Bowie. The latter confessed in his autobiography that he had his first supernatural experiences when he visited the country house where the famous British occultist Aleister Crowley had lived, but at that time this house belonged to Jimmy Page, guitarist of Led Zeppelin. If a person in a perfect state of mind can be carried away by suggestion in a house that belonged to a ceremonial magician, imagine if we also season it with various narcotic substances, as the famous singer was in the habit of consuming assiduously at that time. Bowie also experienced other supernatural experiences at the residence of Deep Purple bassist Glenn Hughes. But these residences were not the only ones in which the popular composer felt evil vibrations, as Bowie even hired the services of a white witch to exorcise the pool of his house. The musician even claimed that several ghosts had lodged in his pool. In the case of Jimmy Page, it is also known that the guitarist was lost in the darkest of occultism and black magic. In fact, this was the reason that led him to buy the aforementioned occultist's house, since Jimmy Page was a follower of the Master of Ceremonies. Bowie was curious about the teachings supposedly acquired by Jimmy Page in these matters, which allowed the guitarist to have a magical aura and magnetism, which turned him into a kind of god emanating an invincible power. So consequently, David Bowie invited Jimmy Page to his house to spend a pleasant evening, in the company of Bowie's girlfriend at the time, Ava Cherry, with the intention that the guitarist would share with him his darkest secrets. Bowie tried to find out how Jimmy had developed such an aura, but he hit a wall, leaving the singer full of unanswered questions, as Page just smiled mysteriously. At one point, Bowie leaves the room, and Page accidentally spills some red wine from his glass onto a satin cushion. When the singer returned, Page tried to convince Bowie that it had been Ava Cherry, although she was not in the room at the time. The guest ended up irritating Bowie in an extreme way, after the singer did not achieve his purposes, and moreover he was lying blatantly to him. Consequently, David Bowie asks the guitarist to leave his house. Page's response was simply to give him one more of his enigmatic smiles. This irritated Bowie even more, and he angrily encouraged Jimmy Page to jump out of one of the open windows. Page continued to sit in the same place, maintaining a sly smile while contemplating Bowie. Finally, the leader of Led Zeppelin stood up silently, walked towards the main entrance, and on his way out he closed the door violently. David Bowie later commented that at that stage, he walked through a world that led to the worst manic depression of his life. He stated that he was hallucinating 24 hours a day and felt as if he had fallen into the bowels of the earth. The truth is that Bowie left that house forever, thinking that Jimmy had invoked satanic demons to invade the house. David Bowie later incorporated those experiences into his music as a therapeutic measure to overcome his fear of the unknown. The singer would later explain that he exposed himself to great psychological damage, but that as long as he could bring those fears and psychological excesses into his music, he was safe.